Alright, so we got another GYROflow compatible action camera on the channel, and this is the Firefly X Lite V2. So, this is pretty much the same as the original X Lite. In the same case, same ND filter, pretty much looks the same on the outside, but they have made two important changes on the inside. They have put an improved sensor in here, and not 100% sure what's different about this sensor versus the other one. I'm not that knowledgeable of the technical details. If you guys know the differences between the two sensors on the old one versus the new one, let me know down in the comments. And the other thing that they changed on here is the video processor. So it's supposedly a faster video processor, and I think they have done that so basically you have reliable gyro data for GYROflow. And the first version, there were a number of firmware updates. I believe on the very last firmware update that I made a video on, it mostly fixed the issues, but there were still gaps in the gyro data. Not as noticeable as before, but still it's there. Now apparently this new version with a faster video processor, that problem is no longer an issue. That's what I'm being told. So that's why they have this new V2. I think V1 is also discontinued as well, so you can't even get it. I believe the price on this has gone up a bit. It's now around $150 for this one. I believe when the V1 came out, it was around $130. Sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more. And again, this I think reflects the additional costs of the hardware that you have in this particular new version. Yeah, but that all being said, I think it's if you wait till the end for the footage, this is probably the best stabilized GYROflow footage out of all of the recent GYROflow cameras that I have features on my channel. In terms of this coming closest to the GoPro Hero 6, I think. Let me explain that a little more detail a bit later, but first let me show you what comes in the box. So you get a BEC here. It's the same one that came in the V1, and basically it takes I think 2 to 6S voltage and downs it to 5 volts on this little plug here. You do get a couple of bare plugs here with just some bare wires, and I know some of you are going to try and wire this up to your flight controllers, and I think that you'll need at least something that'll have excess current available. I think 1.5 to 2 amps is what you're going to need for the camera, otherwise it'll shut off, or you'll have freezes in the video, or your flight controller will reboot, and that's bad and you'll crash. So if you do happen to use your flight controller, make sure that the BEC has enough amperage available to power all of your components as well as the camera. So that's all going to depend on your build. So you're going to have to look that up yourself, because I'm not going to be able to look that up for everybody. You get this lens hood here. This is for like reflections or lens flare. I think that also came with the V1. You get this mount here so you can mount the camera using like the GoPro prongs here, and the camera just slides in. I believe it just slides in like so. So you can mount it like this, or you can mount it upside down with these this mount here in the back like this. And the way you mount it, whether it's up right side up or upside down, is going to matter for your GYROflow setup. I'll explain that a little bit later. You do get this USB-C cable. I believe the V1 came with this as well. And then you get this settings cable. So this basically hooks up to some sort of a monitor or something, or like your goggles, for example. So this is the same pinout for a Fat Shark goggle. And so you can then plug this into the camera via the USB-C, and then access the camera settings like it was like a full-size action camera with a screen, except you're using the screen of your goggles or a monitor. And so the cable comes like this. There's one side that goes to your camera, and then there's a controller board here. So this is it basically has 2 buttons for up and down and for back and enter. And you use this to change the settings of the camera. I will show you that as well. Now when you do fly this on your craft, you can use the balance lead of your battery with this adapter to power the camera, and then you plug this into over here, and you gotta make sure the polarity is correct, otherwise you'll fry the camera. And see the polarity is marked on the back, they were negative on top, positive 5 volts on the bottom, like so. So you make sure that the plug you're using has the correct polarity. It's a common mistake that a lot of people do, reverse polarity, and they fry their camera and then they have to buy a new one. Now I have alternative. Instead of using this thing here, which is kind of bulky, I bought this smaller BEC off of Amazon, which I'll list down in the video description. Much lower weight for flying on your like Sonops and stuff. I believe the voltage range is up to 5 or 6S in this one. I don't remember exactly. I only use this on like 3 or 4S. And it has the same polarity on the plug here for 5 volts out. I believe it had a different plug here on this side. I cut it off and I just used some pins here instead, and so I can use a variety of different batteries and just make sure that I have the correct polarity on the balance lead, so I can use 2S, 3S, 4S, etc. And then this will put 5 volts out. And this is what I use with this camera. This is how I power it up. So if you're looking for an alternative way of powering the camera instead of the included BEC, then this is one way. It's a little bit lighter, but the included one works fine as well if you want to use that. Okay, I got the camera powered up here. Should turn on and it'll start beeping. So you're going to get this constant beeping every few seconds, like that. It's basically telling you that the camera is ready to go. If you want to record, you just press the record button here. If you want to power off the camera, you long press the power button and I'll turn it off. But I wanted to show you how to get to the camera settings. Plug in the USB-C on this side over here. And then the other side here I have a PowerPlay DVR which has a monitor. And you can see here my messy workbench here. That's the live feed out. And we'll just press one of these buttons here to bring up the menu. So you use the settings, the control board here for up and down to go through the different settings. So we're on the outside menu here. So basically there's this video and then the system settings. And then to go into the video menu, you long press the down button. You see the little red arrow there saying indicate they were in that mode there. Then if you want to go into that menu, long press again. And then you have all these different video resolutions. Short press to go down and cycle through these. So they have a variety of 4K, 4.3 and 16:9 modes, as well as 1080p like higher frame rates. But I only interested in 4K 4:3, which is what will work best for GYROflow. But just quickly show you all the different settings there. The 4K 4:3 is the one to use, and it only goes up to 30 frames per second. If you do 4K 16:9, I believe you can go up to 60 frames per second, but it doesn't really work that well with GYROflow. I would recommend 4K 4:3, 30 frames per second for GYROflow for the best results. So there's a number of other menu items here. You can, so like video encoding, you can't actually change this. Not highlighted, it's not black, so you can go into there. Video quality, obviously you want superfine for the highest bit rate. I'll explain what the bit rate is later. Field of view, you want wide. That's I think 170 or 150 degrees field of view. I forget, it's on the specs. Go click the link in the description if you want to see what the field of view is. And then you have all these other settings, like for example for GYROflow, I make sure that gyro and EIS calibration turned off, because otherwise it'll do the stabilization in camera, and you don't want that for GYROflow. Anyways, so there's a bunch of other settings you can go in there. I'm not going to go over all that. Let's go ahead and get out of this. All right, then here's just the system menu. We'll go into here. Now I did use the WDR enhance. I think that was on by default, but you may want that off. It's kind of up to you. You can rotate the image there if you're flying it upside down, if you have it mounted upside down. So I believe quick capture is, as soon as it has power, it'll start recording right away, but I usually like to press the record button when I'm ready. And then you have your status LED and then your beeps. So actually I'm going to turn the beeps off here because I think that's pretty annoying. And then you can also turn the Wi-Fi on if you want to use the smartphone app, but I didn't like the where to download that was. like not in the official app store. So I usually tend to avoid those sketchy, weird Chinese sites where you download their app, because I don't know what they're going to do. So I didn't test it, and I wouldn't recommend it until they put an official app in the official stores. And you can see here when you get out of the menu, it shows you normal video, 4K 30, 4:3, and wide field of view. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the video quality and the bit rate. So in terms of how this compares to like a Hero 6, this is a naked Hero 6. In 4K 4:3 mode, this will record in 4000 by 3000 resolution. I think the max bitrate 80 megabits. The max bitrate on the Firefly X Lite V2 is about 70 megabits at the same resolution, 4000 by 3000. So you get about the same field of view, same video resolution, just a little bit lower bitrate compared to the Hero 6. Now in that same mode, 4:3, 4K, 30 frames per second on the Hero 8, you get 100 megabits at basically the highest settings. So you get even better video quality at that slightly higher bitrate compared to 70 megabits. Now, what you're paying for in terms of the difference here, I don't know what the going rate for a naked Hero 6 is these days. They're kind of hard to get because Hero 6s are pretty much been discontinued for a while. I do know that this one here from GetRC, you can still buy these for about $500. So if that extra 30 megabits is worth it to you, go for it, I guess, because this one here is 150 versus 500 for approximately same weight, around 30 grams. Now, the video quality, I think, is going to be, I think it's subjective. I didn't do any like side-by-side comparing to a Hero 8 because I don't think that it's fair to compare a $500 camera to a $150 camera. So I've actually purposefully excluded that because it's just like kind of comparing apples to oranges. It's like, oh, let's compare this Toyota Camry to a Porsche 911. It's kind of stupid. So you can look at the video quality and kind of judge it for yourself, see if you like it. In my opinion, it's pretty good for the money for that price, and its stabilization and GYROflow works pretty well. I don't see hardly any jitters at all anymore compared to the V1 of this camera. And if you're looking at something like the Naked Cam V4 from the other Hawkeye, the original, the OG Hawkeye, not this Hawkeye, which I reviewed previously maybe like a week or two ago, that one maxes out at 1440p for its GYROflow video stabilization, and the bitrate's significantly lower. I think it's like 40 or 50 megabits. So if you're looking for 4K video in 4:3 mode, in 4:3 aspect ratio, and stabilized in GYROflow, this one definitely has better image quality than the other one, but then you have to consider the cost. This one's $150, that one's like around $70, so it's like less than half the cost. So it's like half the cost, half the video resolution, half the video quality. It's kind of have to make your own judgment. And if you want to move up to the $500 one for the the best naked camera out there, this is about $500. Of course, you can get the Bones, which is the Hero 10. Of course, that's has a whole bunch of controversy around the price of that. That's like I think around $400. And then you have to get the GoPro subscription and all that. So the cost is kind of convoluted when it comes to that. But that's actually the best video quality possible. But you're paying, what, 4 times as much, 3 times as much compared to this. And then, is the video quality 3 times better? It's subjective. Some people say it is, some people say it's not. Really kind of depends what you're going for. So I will leave you with some footage here. You guys can make your own determinations as to whether or not you think it's worth it or not. Out of all of the cheaper GYROflow compatible action cameras out there, I think this is the best. And yes, I do think this is better than the RunCam 5 Orange because this gives me consistent results versus unpredictable results with the RunCam 5 Orange. I feel like sometimes if I do get a good result, I felt like I won the lottery. But most of the time, the results aren't that good. they're actually sometimes worse than the V1 of this camera. So that's why, you know, it's again, it's subjective. Some people are going to like it, some people aren't going to not. That's just my opinion. If you disagree, you know, let me know specifically why down in the comments below. Now, the thing that flew this on was my ultralight DIY Cinewhoop. So keep that in mind, you know, in terms of like the stabilization. The craft isn't the best tuned in the world, but it is soft mounted, and you will need this to be soft mounted. And then when you do the GYROflow setup, basically I think it's the same as the V1. You have to make sure that your Imu orientation is correct. And I will put that up on the screen here for the upright configuration and then the upside down configuration. You're going to have two different Imu orientations. I had the low pass filter turned on, and I did the auto sync for 5, I think, minimum of 5 auto sync points. But yeah, I'll put all the settings up here on the screen. Just use those. Pretty simple, nothing really fancy, and I got pretty consistent results every time I used it. I didn't really change it up, and all the results were pretty good out of just from those basic settings. I didn't do anything fancy. And then of course you need the lens profile, which is the same as the V1. And if you want, you know, more details than that, I documented that in the previous video on this, the V1 camera, so I'll link that in the video description. All right, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.